Welcome to the Produce on Purpose podcast, where we experience life being the real you. I'm your host, Randy Adkins Jr., and today we have a wonderful guest. His name is Kevin Palmieri. Oh, you know what, Kevin? I don't even know how to say your last name really right.
Palmieri.
Palmieri. There we go.
Perfect.
Kevin Palmieri. He is the founder and the host of Next Level University, a global top 100 self-improvement podcast with more than 1,800 episodes, reaching over 1 million people in more than 170 countries. After a brush with suicide, he decided to go all in on his dreams of being a full-time podcaster and entrepreneur. He believes in a heart-driven approach to holistic self-improvement and teaching others how to get to the next level of their lives. Kevin, welcome to the Produce on Purpose podcast. How are you today?
I am living the dream, my friend. I complimented you when we first met behind the scenes on your wonderful voice. I'm going to compliment you again in front of all the people because that's the way it should be. I'm doing very well, and I appreciate you having me.
Hey, thank you for the compliment,
You're
and
welcome.
we are excited to have you. What we always start off with is if you can give us a small introduction of who you are, kind of how you got to this place in your journey, and a little bit about what you're planning on sharing with us today.
Yeah, I think I'm probably somebody who not a lot of people would have bet would be successful in any capacity. Raised by my mom and my grandmother, didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. Didn't do great in school, didn't go to college. Eventually, I somehow landed a job that was fairly high paying. I don't know how it happened. I feel like I got lucky, but that's a piece of the story.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
Yeah, it was good. Cool. Luck is good if you can find it. But if you looked at me when I was 25, from the outside looking in, my girlfriend at the time was a model. I had a high paying job. I was competing in a bodybuilding show, so I was quite literally in the best shape I will ever be in. Sports car, nice apartment, all the stuff. But I still ended up sitting on the edge of a bed contemplating suicide 2 years later. And in the midst of that, I started a podcast, and I fell in love with self-awareness and self-improvement, and I wanted to figure out how to do that full-time. So it's been this really weird journey of never thinking I was going to achieve anything, achieving more than I thought I was ever going to achieve, realizing that an achievement didn't make me feel any different about me, and then essentially trading all of that in to just become the most self-aware, best version of me. And that's, I think, we have a false expectation that our lives are going to get better than we are.
Oh, that's different. Yeah,
That's what I'm here to talk about, my friend.
Our lives will get better than we are. It's interesting because this is very similar. When we first talked, I said we have similar messages. And one of the areas that I often talk about is, these external factors. So you talk about achievements being these things. You had great success. And sometimes there's also the opposite where people are looking at their lives from the external and they're feeling bad and down about maybe they think they should be somewhere else. Tell me a little bit about how you kind of got to this place where you now understand achievement is not the place to be, but understanding who you really are or internally is the place that you should start and go.
Yeah, it all happened for me. This was 2018. I had left my job, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to be a broke entrepreneur. We're going to figure this out. I love podcasting. I'm going to figure out how to make this into a business. I have a business partner. Awesome.
Yeah.
One day, I was home, and I was walking around the kitchen, and I remember thinking to myself, Randy, I am the brokest I've ever been. I have zero prospects of love. I am wildly single. I don't know how I'm going to make money. I don't really know how I'm going to pay the bills. I am the least externally successful I have ever been, but I'm the most internally fulfilled. Interesting.
Right. That's tough. That's a conundrum there.
It is. But I don't know if I feel like people tend to be really good at one or the other. We can all think of somebody right now who just seems to win at everything that they do. They're out there. My business partner's one. He wins at everything. He's really good. But on the other end, we probably know somebody out there that is just centered and fulfilled and loves life. They're probably more fulfilled than the average person. I think it's that the ebb and flow of if you think external results are going to fix internal voids, you chase and you chase and you chase. Eventually you acquire, but you still feel the void, and then you have to go internal. That was my internal season of, I have the least results I ever have, but I'm the most proud of myself. There's something, I was never proud of myself when I made a bunch of money. I was proud of my accomplishments. I wasn't proud of Kev. So that was really the journey of losing everything that brought me significance, and then realizing I would have to find significance within myself.
Interesting, because, and I like how you talked about that void, that no matter how much you acquire in this world, it's riches, money, whatever, even in relationships, if you are not, within yourself, understanding kind of where you're supposed to be going, that you are no longer in that fulfilled state. And so we almost have one side over here and one side over here. Now, I believe what you talk about is how can we have both in our lives, and how can that really be a synergistic part of our life? So where do we start?
You start with self-awareness. We have to figure out. So I think one of the reasons it's so hard to be successful is because, and success in quotes, that could be fulfillment, that could be rich, that could be in shape, whatever success means to you. It's because it requires strategy. But the strategy depends on who you are. The strategy is different for everybody. The strategy is dependent on self-awareness. So I think we start from a place of self-awareness, and we start by saying, okay, as a human being, what are my core values? What are my core beliefs? And what do I aspire to as a human being? And let's talk about whether or not any of those are currently in conflict. Because if they are, that's where things get really wonky. If you want time freedom, and you want to make a ton of money and you take a job where you have zero time freedom, there's conflict there.
Right.
You might get external results, but you might not get internal fulfillment because you're not getting one of your needs met that you desire the most. I would start there. I would sit down and write out core values, core beliefs, core aspirations, and then see what lands on the page, and then let's use that as an opportunity to become more self-aware, and then we can set goals in accordance with those.
Interesting. So we start internally with kind of, what do I want? What is it in life that I want? I'm going to put those down, and you've called those core beliefs, your core values, who you are, what you want. And I'm guessing there's no constraints here. And this is where I think some people get it, and it's difficult because you have patterns, limitations, things that people told you over time is like, there's no way you can do that. There's no way you can make money without working really hard. How do you get to a place where you are writing down those values and those beliefs without really putting in too much of the constraints, or is this something that we iteratively have to continue to go through?
I think it's something that requires iteration because your imagination is different depending on where you are. And to your point, Randy, there's different limiting beliefs. Some people have the limiting belief of I'm not good enough and I am afraid of failure. Other people have the limiting belief, and it doesn't sound like a limiting belief, but it is one, of every time I get really good at stuff, people villainize me and I lose the people I love the most, I'm afraid of success. That's a limiting belief too. So I think it really depends on who you are personally, and it requires iteration. And I think iteration comes from experience.
Right.
That's the hard part about all this is step one is just get clarity and try to build self-awareness. And then we just have to try stuff and then see what happens. Did you regret the time you invested? Yes. Okay. Check that off. We're not going to do that again.
Yeah.
Were you super fulfilled? Okay, let's put that on a list, and that probably means something. But I think it's almost like a pros and cons list that you practice, and then you revisit, and then you just get more clarity as you do that.
That's interesting because that's one of those areas I think is just really part. So it sounds like you're going to be pretty bad the first time you write down your list, and
Probably.
That's not what I was taught in school, man. I was taught that I'm supposed to get it all right the first time so I can get 100, and I'm supposed to know it all. And this is a hard thing to break, to say it, but real life, it is that way, isn't it? It's like we experiment with something, we find out, you know what, I like that, but I don't like this. And I tell my son and my daughters this all the time. I say, look, you can go out, do whatever you need to do. You'll figure out what you really like and what you really don't like, but you got to get out there and you got to start doing that piece. So you've gone through these pieces. We're starting to write this stuff down to start to become more self-aware. Now I've got a list. Now I want to make sure that I'm aware in doing this. Is there something I should be doing on a daily basis or weekly basis? How do I integrate this into my life, Kevin?
Yeah, this is where it gets really hard because your ability to strategize dictates your ability to build the runway, essentially. In an ideal world, you would sit down, and again, ideal and realistic are two different things.
Yeah.
But in an ideal world, you'd sit down and you'd say, okay, this year, my goal is to accomplish blank, blank, blank. So let's just say I'm going to lose 15 pounds for health. I'm going to save $15,000 for wealth. And my partner and I are going to go on 15 high-quality dates. Awesome.
Wow.
Great. Sounds like a great year.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. You would sit down, and then you would break those goals into quarterly goals. Okay. What has to happen in the next 3 months for you to be on pace? Cool. Then you would break those quarterly goals down into daily goals. So what must you do in order to lose 15 pounds? What are the habits? Let's just say one, right? It might be track your calories. Cool. Great. Start there. Right. Under wealth, maybe it's track your bank account every day. Awesome. Great place to have awareness. And then under the love bucket, it would be hard to make a daily habit for that, but let's just say it's send a cute text message to your partner.
Yeah.
Now you are far more on purpose than you were before you had those goals. The hard part is breaking down the yearly goal into the daily goal, because oftentimes you're breaking it into a goal that is embarrassingly small, and that's a good thing. That's right. It's not a bad thing. I think the reason most of us don't do the goal is because it's too big. It's not because it's too small usually. Sometimes it is.
Right.
But it would be that. Yeah, in the beginning, I started with 5 habits. I would learn for 30 minutes. I would exercise for 30 minutes. I'd track my bank account. But all of that was reverse engineered from these are the goals that I'd like to accomplish this year.
Right.
And that's where I would start.
And results sometimes, I think, also become a actual limiting factor. So, for example, we start talking about health, and someone says, I need to lose 15 pounds. And they start the first week and, they start doing some dieting or something like that, and they're not seeing results. But based on what you're saying, if we break it down, for example, quarterly, we have quarterly goals, and know that I've taken the time to say, if I do these things, maybe I'm in a calorie deficit for each week, that I will see 1 pound of loss. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking to lose 15 pounds in 2 weeks, which,
right.
We can, but that's just not going to be a healthy lifestyle sustainment kind of way of doing it. And I think it's an interesting way to be able to combine. So now I have my needs, core beliefs. You've given us some actual tangible goals within the year. Now, is there some other level of strategizing that we should do? Is there anything that we should do further out? Because in order for you to come up and be able to do a podcast like you have and have as many people that are listening, what is the longer range kind of goals that we put in place, and how do those break down?
That's a really tough one because not everybody... In the beginning, I didn't have the perspective to set 5, even year-long goals. I needed help. My business partner helped me tremendously. So it really depends on what's actually constructive for you. If you are struggling to think 2 years ahead, I would just say, I think it's really good to work on character goals on a distance timeline like that, where you think to yourself, okay, well, what is the type of character that you would like to adopt over the next 2 years? I want to be more consistent. I want to be more patient. I want to be more this, less this. I think that's way easier because it's a big target to aim at.
Yeah.
But it's harder to course correct along the way because what are the actual measurements? So I probably wouldn't even worry about anything past a year.
Okay.
Until you are practicing habits long enough where you actually understand this input brings me X output.
Yeah.
and you know how to measure it, and then you know how to readjust. That's the best advice I can give, because in the beginning, if you said, Kev, what is your 5-year goals? I would say, I've only been doing this for 7. I had no idea we were going to be where we are today 7 years ago, so I would have been way off, Randy. Way off.
Hey, and it's a little bit about dreaming. It's a little bit about imagination, right? And I like it. I like starting small, understanding that, we have to start to put down at least having our core beliefs, having an understanding of kind of what we're doing. So you have the external, and what you just brought up was really starting to adopt the internal goals. So how do we break habits? So, I've heard that, habits are around, and I've had a couple in my life. And how do you begin to overcome those particular areas and struggles when it comes to your personal growth?
I think the best way to break a bad habit is to make it really hard to continue. So if you're somebody, so I work from home. I have a home office. This is at my house. If I'm somebody who wants to play video games less, I should not have my video games set up in the office where I can just click a button and they show up on the screen and then I can play. The best thing to do would be to take them down, put them in a box, and put them in the closet. That way, every time I want to play, I have to do that entire system to get it set up.
Right.
I'm not going to do it. It's like, this is just a pain in the butt. It's not worth it. On the opposite end, if I want to podcast consistently, I should have my lights on the ceiling like I do. I should have one switch that turns on everything like I do. Yeah. I should have the camera in the same place, the mic in the same place. Everything is in the same place every day, because the less resistance there is, the higher the likelihood that I actually follow through with the habit. That's part one.
Yeah.
And then, so anything that works really well to build a habit, also the opposite works really well to break a habit. If you have a really good group of humans around you, you can do what we call a commitment device, where I wasn't exercising as much as I wanted to. I went to my wife and I said, I need you to do me a favor. She said, sure, Kev, what is it? I gave her a $100 bill. And I said, I need you to hold this for me. And if I don't go to the gym for the next 7 days in a row, I need you to rip this $100 bill up in front of me. And she said, not going to happen. And I said, babe, it's already done. In my mind, I just needed to commit to somebody else.
Right.
I did it. I went every day that week. Awesome. I got my $100 back. You could do the same thing, but the opposite. If I stop at McDonald's this week for an Egg McMuffin, a side of hash browns, and something, you're going to rip that $100 up that I gave you. Wow. Same thing. The hard thing about habits goals is good habits and or bad habits tend to just have a long runway where you don't see results immediately.
Right.
If we can create feedback faster, you're more likely to stick with the good habit and break the bad habit. So if every time you smoked a cigarette, you had to rip up a $100 bill, I'm willing to bet you'd smoke a lot less cigarettes.
Right.
If every time you went to the gym, you got to keep your $100, I'm willing to bet you'd probably do that more. So those are a couple things, building in extra accountability, extra necessity, and then surrounding yourself with people who don't partake in the habits that you want to break. That's a really, really easy one. If you don't want to smoke and you hang out with 4 other smokers, it's going to be really hard to break that habit.
Right.
Just like if you want to be in better shape and you hang out with 4 other people who are into healthy lifestyles, it's probably going to be a little bit easier. So the community aspect is really big too.
Interesting. And so the idea there is really having that accountability. Kevin, I don't know if I can rip up $100, so I would really. And so if you commit to doing this, which is interesting, so everyone listening, if you commit to ripping up $100, you could actually probably break most of the habits that you have, because
100%.
No one wants to see that happen because of a choice, which are things that we can do easily, be able to make. And having that accountability, I think, also helps us to start to build that habit. And then secondly, you talked about community. Wow. I've always been told that, if you want to know about yourself or you want to know about the people, look at the people who are around you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you begin to look at those that are surrounding you and they don't match up with where you want to go or who you want to be, then I think you need to look at those that are really there supporting you in your communities. And we can have multiple communities to go where we need to go. Man, this is awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about your podcast because I'm,
Sure.
a podcaster, and this has been a new journey for me. And we are actually hitting like 2 years, like right now, while
Nice.
we're talking about this. And so you made a decision and a choice to go away from, something that you had the job, you had all of the things going for you, and you said, you know what, I'm gonna do this podcasting thing. So tell me a little bit about your podcasting journey, and I'm interested. You can go as far as you want to talk about whether your sound quality was right. Just give us some tidbits of how you've journeyed and how you've gotten to where you are at this moment.
Yeah, 2017, I thought, okay, I'm going to start a podcast. This is going to be awesome. I went on Fiverr. Somebody made the artwork. I ordered the mic. I learned how to audio edit. I was off to the races. Boom, here we go. On and off for the first year, I wasn't as consistent as I should have been because I had a job. It was a whole thing. 2018, I quit my job. I partnered up with my business partner, and we said we are going to create the most impactful self-improvement podcast on the planet. That is what we're going to do. We're never going to miss an episode. We are going to put our community first, and our life is going to get harder, not easier, but that's what we're signing up for. From there, I proceeded to go broke because we were so focused on building our characters and becoming better speakers and learning and traveling to events and just improving because, like we talked about at the top, the podcast is not going to be better than I am. Can't.
Right.
That's not the way it works. So I had a conversation with Alan, my business partner, I think in late 2018, early 2019. And I said, dude, I'm broke. I need to find a way to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, you should start coaching for free. And I said, no, I don't know if you heard what I said. I need to start making money. Free does not equal money.
Right.
And he said, Kev, you've never coached in this capacity. So we're going to do self-improvement coaching because our podcast is about self-improvement.
Yeah.
I think you need to build belief in yourself that you can do this. And we don't have any demand. Nobody wants to be coached by us yet. So we're going to have to do it for free. So I reached out to 5 people who I knew listened to the podcast because we were very committed to connecting with our community. We still are to this day.
Yes.
Sent a message. Hey, Randy, I appreciate you, my friend. I'm so grateful you're in the community. I'm interested in doing some coaching. I've never done it before. I would love to coach you. No strings attached. Totally free for the next 8 weeks. At the end of the 8 weeks, if you want to continue, awesome. If not, no worries. What do you think?
Yeah.
Everybody said yes. All 5 people said yes. It's like, all right, cool. So I coached everybody for 8 weeks. And at the end, I said, okay, I'm going to start doing this. This is going to be something I'm going to start doing. What do you think of $50 a call? And everybody said yes. So that became, okay, this is our business model to quote unquote monetize.
Right.
And then from there, we started building the business and we started bringing on team members. And at that point, we had already had some pretty high level guests on. So we were networking with people and getting coached and mentored by some very successful people. Then we got our own custom studio during COVID, which was wild. And then we expanded too much, too fast. And then we said, look, we have to simplify. We got rid of the studio. We focused on what got us here in the first place.
Right.
And now it's very much, I'm a podcaster, I am a coach, and I am a speaker, and I really don't do anything else in terms of within the business.
Yeah.
That's kind of the main 3 things that I need to focus on in order to make this stay rolling forever. And I think the thing that's important is to never lose sight of the main thing. What is the big thing that makes everything else happen? And
Right.
for us, it's always been the podcast. So we will never miss an episode. It won't happen. It's too big. It's too big of a priority. It matters too much.
Right.
And then I would say this too, and you probably resonate with this. I thought I was going to learn a lot about life and a lot about business and entrepreneurship. I've learned more about myself by being a podcaster than anything else because after this episode ends, I'm going to go think about it, and Randy's going to go think about it, and if you're watching or listening, you're going to go do your thing, but this episode lives on for me forever because this is something that I had the opportunity to take part in.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so big on the podcast is not going to grow bigger than me. It can't, in a way. And if it does, it's not sustainable. There's a big difference between creating something and sustaining something. And that's obviously a very important focus for us. So that was kind of all over the place, but that's kind of been the podcast journey in a nutshell.
Hey, no, that's really good because I think it's important to understand kind of the baby steps, because some people are thinking, hey, I'm going to just start a podcast and it's going to blow up. And it was really sounds like you started a podcast. There was time there. You guys were doing what you needed to do, but you weren't making any money, which is typically the case. And then you started to do coaching, and the way that you did it was you started small and you started with free and then moved into places where you were actually charging. So no, phenomenal. I love when people share their journeys, because I think that gives us a place that we can start and then we can get to where we need to be. And I really like the idea of, you say, keep the main thing in front of you. So regardless of how big we get or how successful we are, if we miss out on the main thing, then everything else could actually end up crumbling. And so tell me a little bit about that piece of it, because I know you guys said you blew up. So how did you notice that it was too big and you maybe you took your eye off of what the main thing was, or maybe it was there, but it was just you needed. How did you know you needed to consolidate?
My business partner is very future oriented. So this is why I answered the question about outside of a year vision the way I did. Mm-hmm. He was making decisions today that won't pay off for 10 years. It's very dangerous in the early days of business, because in the early days of business, the most important thing is to survive.
Right.
I'm somebody who is very short-sighted. So I was thinking we need to make money now. And he said, well, we need to grow 10 years from today. That's how ultimately we knew, because we listened to him more than we listened to me. Mm-hmm. And he was thinking years and years and years and years down the line, where I was thinking days and days and maybe months. So it was that. And then it was to the point where we were on so many department meetings within the team that we weren't coaching. We're not there yet. It's not like we have something that's printing money and we can just be on department meetings all day. It doesn't work that way. So it was that. And then I think the other thing too that we realized was, the podcast has grown a lot and the community has grown a lot. But the thing that really differentiated us in the beginning was we were so focused on our audience.
Right.
And when you stop focusing on the audience, it doesn't really seem like anything happens until one day and you say, when's the last time I talked to somebody that listens? Like, I feel like I'm messing that up. It's kind of a slow burn.
Right.
It doesn't seem like it matters until it does.
It's
the leak in the boat where it's like, well, it's only a little bit. Well, that little bit adds up when it's been hours and days and weeks. So I think it was that. The podcast, we never stopped. We stayed focused on that. We weren't focused on the community as much as we could have been, and we were too focused on, okay, this will pay off in 5 years, not we need to increase blank, blank, and blank over the next 5 weeks and 5 months.
Interesting, because then that makes your focus seem to start to be pulled into probably more business-oriented kind of pieces instead of community. Yep. And you've brought it up a couple of times about community. How important is community? And I'm going to ask this question for a first-time podcaster or somebody trying to get into this. How do they truly engage with their audience in a way that's going to be meaningful to build a community?
Ultimately, as a content creator in any form, your community is your way of monetizing. So whether you say, I want to do coaching and products and services, you need people listening on the other end to do that.
Right.
And if you want somebody to give you money for ads, sponsorships, affiliates, you need a large amount of somebody's listening on the other end. The best thing that I have seen, and the thing that works best, is creating opportunities for your audience to self-identify. All that means is this. most people are not going to listen to this podcast episode and then jump on a call with me and say, how do I give you money? It just doesn't really work that way. Mm-hmm. Some people will, some audiences do that, but the vast majority don't. But if I have an opportunity where I can get somebody to self-identify, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's an email list, whether it's a free weekly podcast, or whatever, free call, then I know that person's on the other end of the microphone, so to speak. Then I can continue adding value into their life in a different way.
Right.
Randy, you and I could listen to the same podcast. The host would never know unless we told them.
Right.
We would just be out there on the fringes listening, and they would have no idea that we listen. But if at the end of the episode, or the end of the video, or at the end of the social media post, they said, hey, if you resonate with my content, I have a Facebook group where we have content like this every single day, and it's a great opportunity to meet other people in the community and find accountability, find peak performance partners, whatever. Then somebody goes and joins that. Now I have a name and a face of somebody that listens.
Right.
Then even on a deeper level, I can look at that person and see what their life is about, and does that person fit the ideal client avatar, the ideal listener avatar, or not? Oh, interesting. In the beginning, it was a lot of women that were reaching out to me. I thought men were going to listen to the podcast. Oh, okay. Oh, it's predominantly women. Interesting. Okay. Branding changes. Colors change. Color schemes change. So,
right.
Yeah, community is ultimately the steering wheel that determines what you do, why you do it, and the way you do it. And if you don't know who's on the other end of what you're doing, you're just kind of shooting shots in the dark.
Interesting, and that's like almost you're just doing a shotgun approach, really. And shotguns, all the pellets go everywhere. Instead of a sniper, you are now saying our focus is the community, our focus is the audience, and we're going to engage them in some way, shape, or form. What do you envision for podcasting as we are moving into a lot of new areas, and there's just so many podcasts out there? What do you see on the fringes of the future for podcasting?
Yeah, the AI thing makes it really interesting because I think people are most likely going to overutilize AI, and I think it'll probably create the death of a lot of podcasts. What I'm noticing right now is a lot of people there's a lot of ways you can use AI. So we're using Riverside to record this.
Yep.
There's a AI thing where Riverside will break this up into, I think, what it calls viral clips. Mm-hmm. They're okay. They're not terrible, but they're not nearly as good as somebody sat through and said, ooh, that was emotional, great story, good hook, great lesson. All right, cool. We'll use that. I think a lot of people are going to assume that the AI is going to help them succeed, when in reality, I think the AI is meant to save you time.
Right.
That I think a lot of people are going to go all in saying, I don't know why my show's not growing. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. No, you're doing the basic of what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
AI makes the basic higher quality, but now everybody has access to higher quality basic. So that's something that I think is going to continue. And then eventually, I think we're going to have some sort of revolution, because different always wins. It's just a matter of figuring out what's different. That's one. Two is everything essentially is going video heavy. So I know it's not sustainable for everybody to get on YouTube, but outside of word of mouth, YouTube is the second highest way to get your podcast found.
Yep.
First time ever it's been like that. That's huge.
Yeah.
Video is going to be the way. And then what we were just talking about, I think the creators who have the most engaged, accurate communities are probably going to be the ones that win.
Right.
So like on YouTube, you can make meaningful amount of money with ad revenue and that stuff. Podcasting's not really there yet. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it'll keep going in that direction. But again, it's going to be really hard to do it competing against the people who are really, really putting in the time, energy, effort, and focus. So that's kind of a mix. Yeah, AI is going to make things really weird. Video is something that is going to be more and more utilized, I think. And then the community thing is just going to continue to get more and more and more valuable, because if you're relying on the industry standard when it comes to ads and sponsorships and stuff,
Right.
that industry standard is probably going to go down as the barrier to entry goes down as well. So yeah, a couple of things.
Interesting, because I'm of course in computers, and so I truly believe AI is really there to assist us, and so the creative nature of who we are as humans and what we do, that creativity cannot be matched in what we do. So utilize AI for the assistant pieces of what you're going to do, but make sure you are consistently being creative. It kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. Make sure you have whatever your beliefs, your core values, that you're focused on what you need to do. Video. That's why I started in this place now. I'm doing video. I was audio only. I think video is big as well. And community, I believe, is definitely huge. So if I don't take anything else away from this, I know that community is definitely a big deal.
Can I add something real quick, Randy?
Yeah.
Here, this is the other thought too, and this is the AI thing in a nutshell. AI is really good as something that will be supplemental to your skill set, but here's the thing. Yeah, you can make AI write an entire script for a podcast episode, an entire script for a speech, all of that. You still got to get on stage and do it.
Yep.
And that's what I'm prepping as much for the podcast as I am all the opportunities that come from it that I'm not going to be able to AI my way out of.
Correct. Yes.
We don't edit our podcast because you can't edit speeches. You get
Right.
I get one shot at this. In my mind, this won't get edited. I don't care if it does or not. I'm going to do my absolute best. So I think AI, it creates a crutch that you might not have later on. It's like training wheels.
Yes.
Eventually those training wheels got to come off, and I would hate for those training wheels to come off on the biggest race of your life, for lack of better phrasing. It's a big speech, a big coaching opportunity, whatever.
And you're building your skill set the entire way. I am a proponent of consistently building your skill sets, and no matter what you do. I'm in Toastmasters, so I've been doing that for 10 years.
Nice.
And it's one of those areas where if you learn how to communicate, and there's always a new way, whether it's a new gesture, a new way of saying something, to be able to communicate, if you're building that, man, it changes everything. And like you said, AI can't do that for you. No matter how well we get with technology, if you're still going to make actual connections with people, you have to be able to continue to build that skill set. And I think it's just that our focus changes. You don't have to do the menial tasks anymore, but you can now really focus on becoming better at what you do and who you are. Well, Kevin, it's always so fast. So I always ask this question because I believe that it is helpful when someone comes on, is give us 2 or 3 areas from your journey that we should focus on. And I know your focus has been self-awareness, that in anything, whether it's podcasting, business, that we should take and be able to immediately start to implement in our lives.
Man, one thing is start asking why more and more. Don't do it to an obsessive thing, because obviously that can be destructive, but when you are attracted to someone, their energy, ask why. When you spend time with someone and you feel dirty after, ask why. When you ask why enough, you get to the root cause, and when you get to the root cause, you become the person who's in control of that. So that's one thing that I always advise.
Mm-hmm.
I would say sit down right now and ask yourself, where am I putting my focus? Am I focusing mostly in the past? Am I focusing mostly in the present? Or am I focusing mostly in the future? Is that serving you? That's going to be a personal thing. But if you're focused all on the past, you might be struggling. Mm-hmm. If you're focused only on the present, you might not be setting your future up for the best possible life you could have. Mm-hmm. If you're only focused on the future, you might be grinding it out right now and living a somewhat miserable existence. Just figuring that out, I think, is super, super valuable. And then the understanding that if you can become consistent at something, you are essentially unstoppable. If you can become consistent in exercise, in prospecting for your business, in vulnerability in your relationship, if you can do positive habits consistently, your life will look different. It's guaranteed. That's kind of the way it works, right? And where you are today is not based on what you did yesterday. It's what you've done for the past 5 years.
Right.
Same thing for the future. In 5 years, if you want your future to look different, you can start today. And if you're consistent in that behavior, your life will look very different. So I would probably say start, if it feels right, start tracking habits, whether that's in a notebook, in an app. I wouldn't say in your head, but if you want to start there, cool.
Right.
That's a good step, I think, in the right direction for anybody.
Start to write those things down and having that consistency. I like that. You said consistency, you can become unstoppable. And I believe that we can have all the dreams, we can have all the goals in the world, but if we are not waking up and having the discipline, not doing the practices, then we are not going to be in that unstoppable form to get wherever you're looking to be the best version of who you need to be. Man, Kevin, this has been fun. It's been exciting. I really appreciate that you came on.
Of course.
How can my audience get in touch with you and connect with you?
Our podcast is Next Level University. You can check that out. It's on all the podcast platforms. It's on YouTube. I have another podcast about podcasting. If you're a podcaster out there, called Podcast Growth University. And then the best place to reach me is probably Instagram. My handle is @NeverQuitKid. Anything I can do, questions, comments, concerns, podcasting, whatever it is, please do not ever hesitate to shoot me a message.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin, for coming on, and thank you for the insights. I know that everyone has taken something from this. I have. I've taken quite a bit. The words that stand out to me is community is huge, especially when we are talking about life. Life, you need to have the right community. In podcasting, in your business, you need to have the right community. And additionally, consistency. So I'm going to take the 2 C's that you've given us today and make sure that we are consistent, that you don't stop the consistency in whatever you're trying to do. And last but not least, I'll leave you with this. If you want to produce on purpose, you need to start ripping up $100 bills. Well, no, you want to not rip up the $100 bills, but you want to hold yourself accountable so that your $100 bills do not get ripped up. And that is a way that you can break your habits or create a new habit in your life. Thank you, Kevin, for providing that to us. And I encourage everyone that's listening to this, continue to produce on purpose.